Ben Franzini's back on the Pop Culture Experience. Benny, are you in a robe?
I am, Daniel. I am very guilty. It's Peter Alexander. Got it from the in-laws.
I know we're in quarantine, mate, but you know, a little effort.
Well, that was the whole thing. I thought, like you've said, can you come back on the podcast? And I'm of course I can, but obviously being more than 5 kilometers away and we're not dating, not to my knowledge.
No, unfortunately, but we're not.
Well, this is why I wear to work every day. So I just thought,
really, that's it.
I didn't really have time to get changed. So,
okay.
Well, I wear something under it usually, but
I was about to say, is it a nude setup underneath? Like, is it sort of just a bit?
No, it's not. Okay. But I do look a bit like I've got a bit of a Buddhist monk about me at the moment. Actually, now that I see it on camera, just
the shaved head.
Shaved head.
Yeah.
I mean, just lockdown, shaved head, robe. I could say, you could probably say my mental health's just holding up just fine during lockdown.
It depends where you look at it. It depends how you look at it and where you look at it from. To me, looks like it's hanging on by a thread. The self-respect and it seems to be out the window at this point. But the shaved head.
You're right. Actually, it is a little bit. It's a bit. I guess it's a bit distracting. I'll probably take it off for you just for the
what is that? What is that monstrosity? Is that an Essendon? Oh, I know what that is. I know what that is.
An Essendon Bombers Hawaiian shirt.
At least you dressed the part, mate.
Well.
At least you dressed the part. Why is there a lorikeet? How's a lorikeet Hawaiian? Is that Hawaiian?
Daniel, when you go for the Essendon Football Club, you stop asking questions after a while because lorikeets, Hawaii, Bombers, it makes sense, doesn't it?
Well,
for me.
This is what I'd like to ask. When did you buy that Essendon Football Club Hawaiian shirt? Walk me through that.
I bought it pre-lockdown. I had high hopes for 2020. Let me tell you.
Okay.
I like to, or actually, if we backtrack just to a few months. So it was probably January. So there's not much footy talk in January, but there's like just a tiny bit when people are like, because it's summer and you're like, oh, who do you reckon's going to go well this year?
Yep.
And me, I'm usually like 90% nuffy when it comes to Essendon. Okay. So a bit of but at the start of this year, I decided to say to a couple of my close friends, I said, I'm deciding I'm going to go full nuff this season, Essendon Football Club. I joined all of these Facebook pages that were private, just the ones where you're just like, I usually would look at that stuff and think, you guys are lunatics.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I'm going to join you this season. And then obviously COVID rolled around, but I bought it in about January, February. Haven't looked back. I love it. You could laugh at it, but look at me.
Well, and you do. You look better than you did in the robe. I'll give you that. But I guess what I thought straight away when I saw it. For those that don't know, you're a co-host of the Magoos, the podcast, the football, largely football at this point. We are, aren't we? A football podcast. Obviously, the Magoos implying, it's not a Channel 7 production. It's it's more out of the garage, right. Which is that's exactly the idea, right. Isn't it? Is that how you would sort of summarize the Magoos?
100%. And people who I know you're the pop culture experience, so a lot of your listeners would probably, even if they're from overseas, they're like, one, what is AFL? What is Essendon? And what are the Magoos? It's a lot to catch up with.
Yeah, and
but essentially, well, the Essendon play for the Australian Football League.
I think, to be honest, Ben, sorry to cut you off, but I think if there was ever a time where the sport may have some sort of global recognition, it's probably been during the pandemic. There was a lot of bit of exposure in America. There was a bit of a rumble over there when they realised at one point Aussie rules was the only sport going.
Yeah, I think it was like literally 2 weeks before we decided we weren't maybe not going ahead. There was no sport worldwide, and Pat McAfee, who has his own podcast in America, he's an ex-NFL player, a huge podcast, very funny guy.
He's great. I love
him. He watched the game at like 2 a.m. and then instantly fell in love with the game, and all he does is talk about the AFL on his podcast. So when I think about it I've got a bit of a marketing background, is the amount of millions that the AFL spend on trying to expand into China, and they're always trying to expand the game. All it takes is just someone who's cool who has some followers to go, hey, this game's pretty sweet. And then you look at like all his threads on Twitter and Instagram and stuff. There's so many Americans going, I love this sport. It's awesome. Like, that's all it takes. Instead of the suits going, what should we do to get this game?
Let's play a game in China. Every 3 years they play a game in China. It's like, has that achieved anything yet? I feel like it hasn't. But especially the Americans. The Americans love it. But
absolutely.
So, okay, what I was going to get at was when I saw the Hawaiian shirt, I thought, oh, maybe that's a gag for the podcast, because it is quite a funny podcast as well. It's not just hard-hitting news stories. You guys go into a bit of comedy as well. So I thought, oh, maybe it's a gag. Maybe it was a little prank to play on your co-host, Jake. I'm now realizing, no, it's just proper nuff. That's all this is.
Yeah, this is just me. I didn't even think I could do this for the show. But it's more lighthearted comedy than football. We sometimes go too deep into football where it's like, all right, let's wheel ourselves back, because how many shows are there about football that you can just Google AFL and it comes up with everything. So we try and keep it lighthearted. But back to your first question about what the Magoos is. People still wouldn't know what that means. A lot of people. It's pretty much just it's slang for the reserves. So
yeah,
you've got the seniors, which is the number one team, and then you've got the twos or the Magoos, which is the blokes who rock up to training on Thursday night because they know the Palmers are better than the 400 sprints you got to do, and they're kind of a bit overweight, but still kick goals, that sort of thing. That overweight bloke in the twos who goes on to kick 80 goals a year, and you just don't know how he does it. That's the Magoos.
I feel like
it just happens.
They also end up a lot of the time being those armchair experts a little bit too. Sort of they play their game and then they stay around and they watch the ones after them, and they sit in the crowd with their VB and they go, I would have kicked that one. It's a bit of that as well. When I think of Magoos, I think of that sort of mentality. So when I've been on your podcast, there's a lot of opinions that feel very informed coming from from the individuals on the show, including guests, that probably don't have a great deal of experience to be throwing around such weighty opinions, in my opinion, anyway.
Well, that's it. I was going to say that's your opinion, but I'm not one of those. I think I pull myself up pretty quickly on opinions, because I even think I'm in too deep sometimes, Daniel. This is my little love project, and Jake Lambert, my co-host, who's an absolute superstar. He honestly carries the show. He's just level-headed and has opinion after opinion, and they're not just out of the air. He's actually thought about them, where I will be asked on the show at the time what my thoughts are on something which I hadn't even known was a thing.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, it's that good balance, but
it's a loose approach with a bit of structure that doesn't seem that in your face. I think it comes across. It's an easy listen, I think. That's what I try and do here, is you try and just give off that. There's not much thought that goes into this show, which, to be honest, you and I have sat down today with no preparation, but I think that's the idea. That's what makes the best podcast. That's why I reckon it's
absolutely.
Hang on, that's a pop culture mug. Look at
it. Is. If you want to screen grab this.
Oh, I will. That will be screen grab for sure. Look at that. That's fantastic.
Funny story, this mug, because it took about 8 weeks to get to my house, and you live about 14 kilometres away.
Well, we're in a pandemic. I don't know if you're aware. Postage has just been...
I don't want to hear that, because I saw your Instagram stories are inundated with some other people who probably live not even as close as I do, and they seem to get their mugs just in time.
Well, they were within my 5K, so I could just drop it off. That was the difference. So, there's a difference, Bob, between ordering on time and ordering a couple of weeks late, which, I'd hate to point a finger, but that's what you did. So.
Oh, well, maybe. That's fair enough. I did it. No, actually, no. I don't think that's true. I think I ordered that as soon as you put something out saying, "Hey, getting the feelers out there. Who would want a mug?" And I said yes. And I believe you messaged me personally after that, and you're like, "Hey, are you sure you want one?" Because
it was a half-hearted
17 quid a pop, and yeah, I know what you mean, because you get a lot of people who want to be supportive.
You do.
I love mugs.
Yeah,
I love mugs.
My mug collection is at a point where it's got its own shelf, like a full shelf. You know how sometimes I feel like you can have enough mugs to do half a shelf of mugs and then the other half is maybe glasses. You don't need a whole heap of mugs. But when you're at a point like me, I collect different mugs. I've got talk show mugs. I've got pop culture mugs. I don't know why the mugs are a fascination with me. They just are.
What goes through your mind between the mug that can be used and the mug that goes straight to the shelf? Is there something where you're like, oh, I'm not going to drink out of this?
I'll give you an example. Just bear with me. So I don't know if you remember or anyone remembers Cork Productions. Do you remember that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that sort of started it all for me. And so therefore, obviously, it's not a drinkable mug. It's a pen mug because a pen mug's less likely to be broken, I think. I've had numerous mugs broken in the wash. So
yeah,
I think
so something that's sentimental started it all. So you reckon I should stop drinking out of my under 12s second B&F mug? Is that what you're saying?
I can't believe you are. That's mind blowing. I would have that on a shelf, maybe a pencil. That's a holder.
The reason I asked about the mugs is because you're awfully particular with certain things, and it's somewhat, excuse my lack of another word, but a little bit spectrumy on that sort of. You've got the mug thing. Now there is a story about. I mean, you don't like things getting a little bit dirtied, a little bit.
Oh yeah, a bit OCD.
Well, it's more than that because you would rather keep something in pristine condition than, I would say, let it have a little bit of character. I think character plays a huge role in our lives, Daniel. And I think if that Cork Productions mug behind you had a nice stain on it, you would be able to tell a fantastic story about that stain.
It's I do. There is something to what you're saying. And I think there's two sides of it. Like if it's a self-inflicted stain, sure. But when you're living in a house with other people, if somebody else damages something, that's when I've got more of an issue. If I damage something, it's less of an issue. But if somebody else takes it in their hands to damage something of mine, then that's when I struggle to deal with it. So, case in point, I borrowed a book to you once. I lent a book to you.
I borrowed the book, yeah.
Yeah, said book
That's where
came back. Said book came back with a spaghetti stain, Ben, on the front cover of a book that was actually a white cover. Now,
it was linguine marinara for starters. I just wanted to make that clear.
My point is, a book is a good example of something I like in good nick. I hate when the spine bends. I hate that.
I'm the opposite. I think a book that has a little bit of linguine on it and a little bit of, a couple of dog ears, I think it just means it's had more stories to it. And by the way, this story that you like to tell every now and then as well about this linguine stain is it gets accentuated every time you tell the story. If you told this story just to a random person, they would think the whole book is covered. But it's the tiniest little speck.
Yeah, but it may as well be the whole book. The whole book's tarnished now.
The whole book's tarnished.
It may as well be, Ben. That linguine stain may as well be on every page. And as far as I'm concerned, the book's a write-off. You can have it if you want it.
Oh, done. That's actually why I wanted to do this.
That's what you're angling for.
Because it's one of my favourite books that I've ever read, and I actually would like to borrow it again and keep it now that you've said it on record. So that'd be great.
Well, I know we're not telling you anything anymore because now you know the blueprint to how to get it.
But wouldn't you agree, though? You're a very big Jerry Seinfeld, Larry David fan, and you're not just a fan of their work, but you would probably put yourself in that same category of these little things that happen in your day-to-day life. You have a tendency to just blow up, and you find the comedy in that, and so. What I'm trying to say is you can thank me later for giving you a marinara stain on your book.
There's an episode somewhere in that of a sitcom, maybe, I think. I think that's what maybe you're getting at. There's something to it. I do agree with that. I thought about you just today. I've started a new documentary just off sort of, going into that realm of you remind me because of Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David. I know they had a similar conversation at one point. Larry David left Seinfeld because there's a little bit of like the whole credit thing. Like Jerry was the face and was sort of getting a lot of the recognition. He sort of got a bit shitty with that at one point. Now, I was watching this documentary. I wanted to pick your brain on it. It was half the reason I wanted to do this podcast. So I was watching this one where it's essentially the history of comics. Now, when I say comics, I mean comic books. Now, I know that's not your forte, but more so what I want to get your opinion on is from the creative aspect. Now, you're a writer yourself. A similar situation happened with, Stan Lee.
Mm-hmm.
So when you hear Stan Lee, you think Marvel Comics, all right? They just go hand in hand. But you might not know any of this, right? So there was this guy, Jack Kirby, and he was largely considered to have co-created with Stan Lee characters like Iron Man, Captain America, a whole range, not Captain America, but a range of these massive Marvel characters, which today, even you, somebody that's not that into the realm, you would go see a Marvel movie because, it's what you do now. It's pop culture. Everyone goes and sees them. But Stan Lee was largely seen as he got all the credit because he was the face of this thing, right? Which was Marvel. Same thing happened with Spider-Man, Steve Ditko, this other guy. Now, these are guys that are artists and writers, okay? But Stan Lee oversees them, almost running this sweatshop looking thing where he's got all these guys, huge talents, but he's the puppeteer of it all. So he's managing it all, therefore, and he's the face of Marvel. So all the general public just see him and go, oh yeah, he does all this. He puts his name on the book. He must do it. So it caused this massive rift. And I found it interesting because I didn't know any of this, that Stan Lee is largely considered a theft by a lot of creatives out there, a lot of writers that feel hard done by having had similar situations to them. And it got my brain going a little bit. I was kind of looking at it, as people like us that like to dabble and attempt to be, do something in the form of writing or do anything creative, right? Where do you reckon you sit on that idea of somebody gives you an opportunity to come in and work on something, and in the process you create it, co-create, with this other person, and then there's one side that's the credit side of it all. How much credit do you expect? The other side is feeling like you've been hard done by and somebody's almost stolen your ideas as their own. I just think it's a really interesting discussion around how important is that to a person. Like for me, like I don't know if it becomes a money thing or if it becomes just a sort of what's the word? Your own
ego
body, an ego, but a body of work, that a respect from the general public. Like everyone respects Stan Lee. Everyone holds him up on this pedestal, saying he gave us our childhood. Whereas these other guys are sitting there like, nah, not really. We did. Without us, there would be nothing. What do you reckon about all that?
It's interesting because you said the Larry David one at the start, and my understanding was Larry David didn't. Well, George Costanza's is based off Larry David, but Larry, to my knowledge, could have been George at the time if he wanted to. And I always thought, and I think this is a Jewish thing, that they didn't actually really want. They wanted to have their name on it and do the work, but they didn't want to really be the star of the show. So like Larry, like I would have thought Larry as a personality is happy to do the behind the scenes dirty work and the real like creator, and the people who know, they're the ones who give him the credit.
Yep.
And the people who mainstream, the general public, they're the ones who give Jerry the credit. I sit in the middle where I think they're both just extremely great at what they do. Yeah. And it's the same with like Seth Rogen, Evan Goldberg. Again,
it's another good example.
Evan doesn't want to be in front of the screen. So Seth gets all the credit, but the people in the know, they know that Evan actually does. He just sits. He's the one who's sitting down doing the nitty gritty stuff. But they both work at Trey Parker and Matt Stone from South Park. They're the exact same. I don't know if you've seen any of their. Yeah, I know you've seen South Park. Their work as people.
Is Trey Parker considered the spokesperson for the two, if you would, like the more recognizable figure out of the two? Would you say that?
It's
because
not that.
Because to be honest,
like if you watch,
looking at that example that you've just said, I feel the examples I've given, there's a star there. Like you could argue Larry David now has created himself to be a star given Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah.
But I mean, Jerry Seinfeld is the biggest comedian on earth in terms of recognizable figure.
Yeah.
I think that's where people would go to. Whereas Seth Rogen and Evan Green. What is it? See, I don't even know.
Goldberg. Yeah, Evan Goldberg.
Evan Goldberg.
Yeah.
See, like I couldn't even sit here, Ben, before you said it and tell you. I know Seth Rogen develops a lot of movies, writes a lot of movies with a writing partner. Couldn't tell you his name though. Whereas the South Park boys, I kind of just think of them as the South Park guys. That could just be me not being as big of a fan. But do you know what I mean in terms of that mainstream recognition? When somebody cracks the mainstream, it's almost what you said before about, oh, no, I'm happy to sit back and just have my name on it. I feel like it almost would change over time. Like, that's all well and good at the start, but no one can really know what's going to explode and blow up to be something you could never have imagined.
Yeah, over time, it's a good point. Over time, I just think, I think it all depends on that individual and how they feel about it, what was agreed upon. You know, like there are a couple of examples, as I said, that they're still getting paid probably 50-50, and they're doing probably more of the work, just not on screen. But I guess it depends on your personality. I personally would be happy to be the lesser of the two of all of those groups. You know, because. But that's coming from a more of a writer's point of view. I would happily, you know, if we worked on something and you were the star of the show, I honestly can say that if you and I had an agreement where I do 50% of the work still, but it's just all behind the cameras.
Yeah,
that I'd be fine with you getting it with the recognition.
Yeah, I too feel
that's how it works. You're the one you're the pin-up boy. It's like any sporting team. You get all the role players and the ones who actually do the hard work, and they make the stars shine brighter. So if anything, they should. That's just society. I think, as in general, I don't think that's a. I don't know. I guess it does depend on just how that individual reacts to that, and do they want to be the star? If that's the case, then you probably should have had that chat with your partner. And what's your? Yeah, I guess with the Larry David one, he later on maybe wanted a bit more stardom. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think I think that was what that got to. I mean, obviously. Larry David's like, there was studio executive issues, just button heads, and that's just the type of guy he is. But I do think there was a large part that, he went on to star in his own show. I think that is enough to point to, he realized he could do what he could do. Now, you could make the argument Seinfeld isn't the show if Larry David is in that show. I don't think it would have worked, to be honest.
No, neither do I.
Yeah, I don't know. It's something where I find myself, if I've written something, it's to my detriment. You get a little, you feel like you're looking over your shoulder, like, am I going to get fucked over here? Like, I want to take it, I want to just put it everywhere, but then is someone going to steal it? And like that's why I think this topic sort of interests me a lot, because those comic book writers I'm talking about, like, they got their names on the books. That, like, it would be written by so-and-so, it would be drawn by so-and-so, but it would be characters created by Stan Lee. So therefore, when something's done with those characters beyond that, even though they also created them, the royalties, can you imagine? Imagine you're sitting there and you're like, oh, we created this character, Iron Man, I don't know, it could be okay. It's a multi-billion-dollar franchise, just Iron Man now. Like, and you're sitting there like, it's such a hard thing. I don't know, I just think that if I was sitting there, especially, you've got to consider, and we're talking largely issues from the 1950s, all right? So this is, like, it's said that back then they'd get given a contract to work at Marvel, and they'd have to sign it there in the room. No lawyers could look at it. That wouldn't happen now, really. Like, you could push back against that. So we are talking about a different time, but there is something scary about creating something, I think, even for me, or maybe this applies to you as well, creating something, some IP, all right? And you take it out there and you shop it around and somebody buys it from you. This fear of, am I going to get shortchanged here? Like, is this going to bite me in the ass? Like, and, you sell something and then it's worth 50 times that amount down the line. Yeah. That scares the shit out of me.
Yeah, I definitely know where you're coming from, and a lot of people would have that issue. But I think for me, it's like internally, if you look at like why you're doing what you're doing, like, are you just trying to get money out of out of someone, or are you do you write because you genuinely love writing, and do you want to make people laugh because you genuinely want to make people laugh? And if your idea got stolen, God forbid it does, but if it did, not only is it like, I guess it's a compliment, but at the same time, it's like that gives you the validation of like, all right, you're at least in that, you're in that realm, and you're now doing what you love doing. And for me, working full time in a job that I hope nobody where I work with listens to this, a job that I don't love, if I was getting semi ripped off, but also was getting some credit, or at least the right circles were getting, we're thinking, okay, this guy, in motion. You'd be disappointed, but I'd be chuffed, and I'd be stoked that I'm actually doing what I love doing, and that it's actually resonating with people. But you'd be filthy, absolutely. But you also definitely can't live your life with that fear if it hasn't even happened to you, because then you won't release anything, because then you'll be like, I'm going to keep it all to myself.
Yeah.
It's art. You're meant to actually like let it, like, give it to the world. And who knows, that idea that you came up with maybe wasn't even your idea, so to speak. Like, you might have come up with that specific idea, but had it been done in some sort of other realm, like they talk about the idea that there's no such thing as originality anymore.
Yeah.
And I definitely get that theory, because everything you think of, you may have experienced or seen or taken from somewhere else. Everything's innovation. But I don't know, I'm kind of getting off track, but I would just be like, if you're a famous writer and you're then getting ripped off by a Stan Lee or something, you'd be more filthy. I guess the position I'm in is like, I would do anything to get into that position. So it's like, I don't know.
I reckon if I was successful, if I'm Stephen King, right, and I'm sitting there, got this idea, and then there's some, he wouldn't have a ghostwriter, but say there was, and he stumbled across an idea of Stephen King's, and then suddenly there's a book out. I would be less annoyed if I was Stephen King, because I'd be like, you know what, I'm good. Like, throw a dog a bone, whatever, mate. If that helps you, all good. I've had a heap of success. If I'm trying to crack in, and then somebody takes an idea of mine and it turns out to be a massive hit and they succeed off it, and I'm sitting there twiddling my thumbs, how much would that hurt? You're 100% right. Like, you can't live your life by it. But I do wonder, if I was put in both positions, what would hurt that little bit more? Having an idea stolen, or never putting it out there at all? I feel like they both hurt that little bit. I don't know. I just thought it was weird.
I think not putting it out there will hurt you in the long run more, though. Because then you become some grumpy, senile old dude about, what if? And, my dad's like that, and it's like, it gets boring to listen to. It's like, all right, cool. Like, you're talented. Yeah. That's fair enough. And I sort of have the same thoughts about myself, like right now. It's like a crossroads sort of thing. It's like, well, if not now, when? Do you like, you don't have a mortgage, you don't have a family, you don't have kids, you don't have all those things. It's like, if you don't do it now, I guess it also, if you only had the one idea and that one idea got stolen, you'd feel lifeless, and you'd be like, oh my God, I've got no leg to stand on. But if you had 20 ideas and one got stolen, you're like, oh, sweet, I'm all right, I'm on the right track, I've got 19 other ideas. Or you keep those wheels in motion. Like, Stephen King wrote, how many novels has Stephen King actually written? Like, it's crazy. He probably had one stolen, and he'd be like, that's cool, I'll go fucking, I thought of that in 5 seconds. Like, the backing yourself to know that you're creative enough that you will get over that, and because you've got an abundance of ideas, that will get you through as well. I mean,
true. Yeah. I mean, if you have one good idea, that would probably motivate you enough to think you could come up with another one and then just push through. That's true. Yeah, that's true.
That's interesting.
I don't know. I found that interesting. Here's another one though I want to run by you, because this actually screamed you when I watched something that's just been released on Netflix, and to be honest, I wasn't even going to bring this up today, and it's just jogged my memory. Are you off Facebook at the moment? Like, in terms of, have you still deleted the app?
I don't have the app. I don't have the app on my phone, but I'll go on it maybe once a day just to check. But my news feed is literally like, I've screened everything, so it's the most boring news feed of all time. So that makes me not want to go on it.
So walk me through the thought process behind all of that, getting rid of the app, trying to limit the time on it, and the news feed. That part interests me too. I'm
The
getting
newsfeed I did a
somewhere.
couple
I'm
years-
getting somewhere. Don't worry.
Yeah. I did the newsfeed I did a couple of years ago, and I can't remember how to do it if you're asking. But you can actually pick what you want to see and not see. So I've literally got my family, a couple of friends, I think yourself included,
I'd like to hope so.
and just like a bunch of comedy clubs and stuff like that, with like stuff I'm interested in.
Yep.
And the rest, so all of my other friends gone. It's not out of my life, just Facebook, because you just end up mindlessly scrolling. And yeah, you could take the approach where it's like, well, you just need to be more disciplined and stuff like that. And I agree with that, but I know my personality well enough to know that out of sight, out of mind. Like if something's in the kitchen, I'll eat it. If I don't buy it, I won't eat it. So
yeah, okay.
I know the science, and I'm not going to try and push against it. So it's like Facebook's boring as shit to me now, and has been for years. So when people are like, "Oh, I'll tag you in this thing," I'm like, "All right, I'll watch it in a couple of days."
Yeah. So you've scratched that. There's no itch to scratch anymore in terms of I've got to check my phone.
But
how long did that
story.
take? Oh, really? So you haven't shaken Instagram?
No.
Why keep Instagram?
I don't know if it's a picture thing or video thing. It's easy to use. I think its user face is much better. And I still want to interact with all my friends. So I just would like to keep it on one app, really.
Yeah.
So I'll tag people in Instagram, or they'll tag me, or I'll DM. Like I know like a group of our friends have a Snapchat group that's been going for like 3 years, and I think I actually created it at the time.
Yeah.
And not the smaller one, the other one. And and I haven't been on that for like 2.5 years, and I saw one of them Snapchat something the other day, and I was looking over, and I was like, "Oh, is that chat still going?" I saw the name, and they're like, "Oh yeah, are you not in it?" They didn't even know I wasn't in it. It's been 3 years.
Yeah, I honestly forgot it was. In your defense, I think it's only just recently picked up a bit of steam again, but
okay.
yeah, I too forgot that existed.
It's for Facebook. It probably took a month, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a long time, isn't it?
Mind you, actually, it was longer than 2 years ago. It was during the 2016 election in the US. I know we're in Australia, but it was just like, I don't even live in the US. I can't get away from this thing.
Yeah.
Facebook was going downhill for a long time before then as well. And I was like, I'm just, how there's early adopters?
Yeah. Yeah, you were one of them.
No, I was an early ship jumper. I was just like this. I could see the Titanic. I could see that the iceberg had hit. And then they bought Instagram. It's like, all right, so that was their way of saying that we've got the second most powerful app, which I think is now the most powerful in terms of viewership and people actually liking the app.
Yeah. Well, the reason I bring it up is because I don't know if you're familiar, there's a new documentary that's been released called what's it called? The Social Dilemma. So essentially it's a doco that just focuses on the impact that technology and social media are having on everybody, essentially the world, besides like a much older generation, maybe. Our generation, definitely, and down, it looks at the impacts both sort of in all ways, whether it be physically or mentally for the individual, but also for the global scale and sort of like the ripple effect it has through everything, all of society, just because of this technology. And it was, honestly, I watched it today and it was a little bit scary. And I knew it all. It was nothing, they weren't saying anything where I was really surprised to hear. I wasn't surprised to hear they have an ability to track how long you spend looking at any given photo. As soon as you click on a photo or you scroll up to a photo, it starts a time. Like it's ticking. And if you spend a minute on that, it'll start tailoring things for you data. Based on that. Yeah, it's all the data. And so for so long, to me, I think data in particular meant nothing. Like I was just kind of like, the data battle, the data war. Everyone needs as much data as they can possibly get. I was like, you know what? Have my data. I don't understand why it's of interest to you. Like, I don't care. And I still kind of feel that way. I think more what I took away from the doco was the personal impact it takes on people's lives, the killing off of personal interactions, one-on-one interactions with people in person rather than on a device. That was more what that sort of struck me. But there's definitely there's definitely something scary about how they can track your data. And I think the thing that jumped out to me the most was looking at, so like we're living through a pandemic has not helped this at all, but even the bushfires here in Australia earlier this year, or elections overseas, the divide between different sides of the fence is becoming greater. So wherever you sit on any matter, that divide is becoming heightened. The more time goes on, the more people spend time on technology. And the way they outlined it, now, true or false, I mean, it looks pretty true to me. The facts they back it up with are pretty damning, of how social media, because of the tailoring and targeting of content towards what people's interests seem to be based on what they spend time looking at, it starts making it clearer how people can have such divided opinions on things. So if you're somebody that is big on conspiracy theories, well, guess what you're going to get a lot of in your newsfeed? More conspiracy theories, more to support this out there idea that may be true or false, but there's more people getting exposed to it than there would have been in the past. More people exposed means more content created to reach that audience. There's people that they can tap into. Oh, people have an interest in that. Maybe I'll do a video too. Maybe I'll get famous off that. Suddenly, there's bloody conspiracy theories and extreme views on things that are getting around more than there is news, which I thought was interesting. Apparently, there was this study where they worked out that conspiracy theories and fake news, or, the actual fake news, not the Donald Trump fake news, the actual fake news, spreads 3 times faster than actual news. So like news from a reputable source. Now, I know that's another argument in itself, but compared to some nuffy out in Whoop Whoop sitting in his lounge room like we are, sitting here having a political view on something. You know what I mean? Like people with informed opinion versus an uninformed opinion, just sort of speaking on not much at all.
Yeah.
Crazy scary to think how fast that news travels, and any wonder people have such a divide now. Like the tensions are high during a pandemic from people sitting on different sides of largely a political fence.
Yeah.
I don't know. I found that scary.
No, it is scary. No, I actually watched it the other night as well myself.
Oh, you watched it? Oh, great.
I have watched it. I fell asleep with about 10 minutes to go. Not because it was boring. I was actually a little bit high, but
You know what? I'm curious to know what your thoughts were having been high.
I was batshit scared, but I would have been sober anyway. That's sort of, this stuff has concerned me for a long time, and it's not like, somebody think of the children and all this kind of stuff, but it's more scary about, when they say tracking data. It's not like people get this misconception. It's like, who cares if they track where you are and all this kind of stuff if you're not doing anything wrong? It's what you're talking about with the tailoring things, and you like this video on Donald Trump, or you'll like this one too, and then it creates this vacuum, which this was really emphasized in the 2016 election with Trump and Hillary. You were either fully Trump or fully Hillary, because that's what all your social medias would show you, because you did like that video or whatever. When the actual reality is, there's statistics and graphs to show this, that the vast majority, you're talking like 90% of people are in the middle. We're all basically in the middle. But at the moment with lockdown and stuff like that in Victoria, with our Premier Daniel Andrews, and it's either Dictator Dan or Dan's the superstar. It's like, I'm sort of in the middle. I'm like,
so am I.
I understand why he's doing certain things, but I also sometimes think that some of them are a bit harsh. But it's like, okay, do you really think a dictator can run just one state in a democratic nation? Like, fuck, you're all idiots if you're thinking that.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't even say you're all idiots, because that's what actually fuels it. And like, again, talking about like the election in 2016, all of the statistics, quote, said that Hillary was going to win in a landslide. So, and everyone's like, yeah, sweet, she's going to win. And what happened? She didn't win, because the real people who weren't the vocal ones, because we're not all vocal. I could comment 1,000. I'm on Twitter right at the moment, and I got off Twitter for about 6 months, and I was probably happier in that 6 months than I got off it because I would go down rabbit holes and I'd be like, you're an idiot.
It's easy on Twitter. It's very easy.
Oh, Twitter's the word, because they literally are just opinions of people.
And it's toxic, largely,
How many times have you bitten your tongue a day because you think, A, are they correct? And B, if I say this, am I even correct? and see, do I want to then have an hour argument with this person I don't know?
Mm-hmm.
I let it go to the keeper every single time. I don't bite on anything anymore. So it's like the ones who are biting, they're the ones fighting amongst each other, and it looks like that's the consensus of people, but it's not. It's the ones who aren't actually active in those conversations. Well, they're not even conversations. They're not. They're just people yelling at each other. It's just, you're an idiot. No, you're an idiot. You're wrong. No, you're wrong. It's like, oh, well, fuck. Well, now we are. Oh, look where we are.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing's been achieved. The conversations aren't able to be constructive anymore because people are their emotions are so heightened because, because everything they see is so on their side of the fence. It's so in their defense of their argument because that's all they get tailored to see. And I thought it was an interesting point in that documentary where one of the tech guys was like, you might sit there and think, how can people have these extreme views or these how can they subscribe to these conspiracy theories? And you sit there and you go, you almost judge a person. You're like, you're just an idiot. Like, why would you think like that? And then you realize it's because that's all they see in their newsfeed. So it seems so clear to them. It seems so reinforced as fact because they're like, how do you not know this? Like, it's everywhere. It's all over my Facebook. Like, I can't go anywhere. How can you not be seeing this? And I'm sitting there going, what are you talking about? Like, you're imagining this. What is there, like 2 videos out there? Who said this? One guy? It's like, nah, probably 50, and they've seen all of them, but I don't see any because it doesn't appeal to me. So therefore they don't put it on my newsfeed. It's a bloody scary concept, and it gives you a good idea why we are where we're at.
Yeah, and it's not a futuristic thing too. It's happening now. It has been happening for a few years too. I know Zuckerberg's been in some hot water, and he's had to actually answer to, like the U.S. Attorney's Office, and he's actually had to go to court and stuff like that. Not him, like he will go, but not for specifically him, but Facebook and what should they be changing policies and all this kind of stuff. But we're all. This is the thing. I only just thought of this now, but we're all guilty of this, and it's not. It's not even like a political thing. Like I could say, no, even if I was tailored to all this Trump bullshit or whatever, or what, like whoever it is, I would like to think that I would be able to still push back on it and say, no, I've got this moral compass where I'm like, no, this is what I think is right and wrong. But I'm guilty of it too, in a much more plainer sense, in that a couple of years ago, I watched Sopranos from start to finish, smashed through it, Daniel.
Yeah,
and I don't know if you've seen Sopranos.
Oh, I've seen it.
It's an amazing show, and you could put it with any show. This is just my example.
Yeah.
By the end of towards the end of the last season, I'm literally walking down the hallway in my house with a robe on and a wife beater, and I'm eating salami straight from the fridge, and I'm literally
easily influenced, Ben.
I'm in their family. Like I have spent so much time looking at this family and just going, this is sick, even though it's all so wrong. What they do, they're all criminals, but it's so romantic. And then that's just a little thing that crept into my. I'm joking, like obviously I wasn't just eating salami out of the fridge, but I actually would walk around and be like, just a little bit more taller and thinking like I'm connected, but I'm not.
Well, and I get that because, and I think that sort of plays into a lot of this is people. I know I do. You want to feel part of something. It's nice to feel. Yes. Part of something,
it's called tribalism.
Yes, and so whether that be a political side, whether that be a TV show that you're really into, and it's so much so you feel like Essendon Football Club.
Yeah,
I mean,
is the same thing.
Yeah, there's something about being. It's the tribalness that then brings out the aggressive defensiveness. Yeah. Like I guess it's like religion. I mean, let's not go down a religious route, Ben, but
let's do it.
No,
what's your favorite one?
You know what I mean, though?
One's Buddhism, clearly.
Yeah, obviously. Big Buddhist, Ben Franzini. Yeah, that documentary scared the shit out of me. It didn't scare me. It really made me aware of... It kind of reinforced everything.
It scares you, but... And everyone would say the same thing. This scares me. But what's going to actually happen about it?
No, I don't think a whole heap.
Because governments and stuff don't know how to control tech. They don't know how to control data. They're too behind on data. Like I work at a tech company and they're all about data. Data, I think only a few years ago, took over as the number one commodity over oil. And it's like that in itself, like people like our parents' generation, they'll be like, data? Like What do you mean
Have it.
selling data?
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense. It's like, yeah, but think about what they're doing with this data. They have algorithms and they have computers that decipher what this means. They know that I'm, at 3:50 on a Tuesday afternoon, I spend more time on an Instagram model's Instagram page than I do looking at the financial review. And they're like, all right, so this guy's into beach babes. Cool. Let's give you more of those.
Yep.
It's all like, and then it's just a spiral because we like to think we're smarter than we are. And we're not. This goes back to me talking about cancelling my news feed on Facebook or tailoring it to just shit that I like, and not political stuff, but just what I actually like is comedy and football and whatever. And sometimes I choose to actually deliberately stay away from those hot topics because it's like not to get full chimp, like a monkey on a spinning rock, but that's all this is. It's like the people who are arguing, it always comes back to like how happy you are with your life and your situation, and no one's on Twitter arguing to the cows come home who are happy with where they're at.
Yeah.
So I think you've got to look internally more.
Yeah, that's not a bad point. It's I don't know. It's scary, especially seeing that and going into another election. It's going to be interesting to see how I now watch that play out if I do see it through a different prism almost, and just sort of. I think watching that documentary, I would really recommend it for anyone. That even I don't even think you need to have an interest. I think it's just good information to have, just to sort of at least. I don't know, try and take a little control of your own life back a little bit, but just be able to see things a little bit more clearly and what's happening, because it is easy to get sucked into that phone. George is constantly yelling at me about, I almost feel like she deliberately talks to me while I'm on my phone just to prove the point of, nothing. That's fine. Finish up your text. I'll talk to you later. And then I feel guilty for the night. You know what I mean? But I sort of have an appreciation for that now. I'm like, okay, I get it. Yeah, there is an issue. There is definitely an issue there. Another issue, I did think of it coming out of it, and I love your opinion on this. So I'm reading at the moment a book about The Daily Show. Now, I don't know if you're that across it, but... You know, man, I'm big on the talk shows. I love them. There's something about the platform. It's probably why I have a podcast. I just love, I don't know, I love that that outlet, for lack of a better term. I think it's the comedy shows that have the ability, like The Daily Show, to mix politics and hard-hitting global matters, for that matter, in with comedy, right? I think personally, for me, it's a really digestible way of understanding the state of things and helping me form an opinion on it for myself, right? Now, not
to butt in at all there, but the vast majority, and I'm talking 99% of those talk shows are all very left-leaning.
Yes,
so,
totally agree.
Just to say, it's kind of ironic, the conversation we've just had.
Yeah, no, and I do agree, but it's kind of, you could also say, the book I'm reading, right, so it's based largely around Jon Stewart's era on the show, which The Daily Show was largely created as an answer to Fox. So the Fox News platform, which had people like Bill O'Reilly, very right-leaning. Like, anyone that's not familiar with Fox News in America, go on Google or go YouTube.
No, congratulations. Stay ignorant. Just stay where you are, because you're probably happier than all of us.
And it's, if you don't know, it's essentially a network that was created for right-leaning people. I think it's flipped in America, isn't it? Left or right or something? No, liberal and democratic always confuses me. Yeah.
It's just we have the Liberal Party, which is actually more right-leaning, which does confuse you, I guess.
Yeah. But so it's essentially for right-leaning people, and it's all just very much negative on the left. And they had that, and it was impacting hugely, similar to what you could say social media does for people that show interest in that area, voting. And there was no real pushback from a left-leaning audience. So The Daily Show was created to try and target that demographic that wasn't being hit. There was no info created for them, which was, people that would have been our demographic probably back then. Young, largely a male demographic, 18 to 35, I think it was. Handsome, strapping young podcasters like we are. balding, Buddhist-looking things.
I'm not balding. It's just shaved head.
It's just temporary. It's temporary. But it did get me thinking. I was like, I kind of reckon that system worked a bit better because at least there was less noise out there. I think almost now, like back then, it was you could go to Fox and that's fine. If that's what tailors your interest, that's fine. You've got Fox. If you're more onto the left side, you've got things like Daily Show, Colbert Report, any name a late night talk show or anything like that. Pick it and it's probably left leaning. Now, I don't think the voice of platforms like that are so good at what they do and actually are informative regardless of which side of the fence you sit on. They both did present a discussion to be had, and you would go back and YouTube any of it. They were always a discussion. They would always be open to hearing both sides, and they would debate on the shows. Now I feel like there's so much that's just one person turning on a camera and just giving their opinion with no real information or point of view of the other side of the argument, and then just post it, put up, it's out there, watch that. And people do, and then they base their opinion off that. So there's not even the ability to hear both sides anymore, mixed with the amount of content. Like there's just too much. You can't cut through the noise anymore. Shows like The Daily Show don't have that reach that they used to have, because there's too much variety out there. There's too much to fall down the wormhole of, and you miss the information along the way, and you get caught up in the extremism of certain misinformed or uninformed people, either side of the fence, that give their opinion based on not a great deal. I just feel like those that had the job of being those spokespeople have lost it a little bit in this modern age of technology.
And 100%. And what do you like? Everyone always says, if we could go back to X, but sorry to be the bearer of bad news, we're not going back as a society. Technology just keeps going forward, and it's not going to stop.
No.
So it's more like instead of going, this needs to stop, that is never going to happen. It's like, where do you like? I don't really have the answer. I think there's some really good podcasts out there where they do actually, they're longer, like, not to plug Joe Rogan because he doesn't need it, but and whether or not his more recent stuff, you could probably argue isn't as good. I don't know. That's up to the individual, but I've listened to many podcasts where he's spoken to for 3 hours on, like, at length and ad nauseum, genuine conversations with left and right people, and those like, it's almost like, because that's disappeared, it also props up the opportunity for it to come back in another form, like podcasting. Like everyone was doing. No,
I totally agree.
You can't do more than an hour on a podcast. People's attention span's tiny. The biggest podcast in the world goes for 3 hours at least most time, because we're deprived of this long-winded thing. Every TV show you see, Daniel, and I know you've had people on talking about the different TV shows and whether or not they're reality TV or whatever. And I'm a sucker for a couple of shows here and there. Majority I don't really like, but because of the same thing with the Facebook and the algorithms and the data. These shows are based off that data. If you next time you watch a reality TV show, count how many seconds in between a shot take, between a different camera angle. It's literally 6 seconds.
Yep.
6 to 10 seconds, because that's our attention span. So it's like, all right, we need to keep it. Like, have you ever just like gone, I don't even like this show, and you watch the whole show because you were just like, oh, something new.
Yeah.
It's all marketing, and it's all psychology.
It's the same with the scroll. It's the same with the scroll on your phone. Like, you just scroll,
thing.
bang, something new. It's
all the same thing. But my point is that there are still a lot of people out there who go, no, I want something more in depth, because you feel that little bit of emptiness. And like, look, I'm not the best reader. I like books, but it takes me ages. I struggle through them. I struggle through books.
So do I.
So I like a really long podcast. I like those sort of things. So yeah, I guess we sort of got to go through this period in technology to hopefully get through to the other end. And I think there might be something along the way where we wake up and go, oh, no, all this technology is awesome and it's bettering our lives in so many aspects. So let's just sort of like start trimming the bits that don't. I don't know.
No, I reckon
Not sure.
I reckon there's a lot to that. I hadn't really thought of the podcast platform, but I guess you are right. That seems to be where, and you can almost see in the people that are aware of podcasts or how to get a podcast and listen to it. It is something that you have to almost seek it out a little bit. Like you have to be willing to go and find something of your interest or something that interests you that you want to find out more about. It is largely it's definitely an entertainment aspect too, but there is a large amount of it that is informative. And yeah, it is probably the best platform for it. I agree. Rogan's probably the best at it. It's, wherever you sit on Rogan, I touch and go at times on him. But what I would give him credit for is a fantastic ability to have a conversation and be open enough to at least hear the other person out. You might not walk away thinking you agree with that person after the conversation, but you'd walk away having let them have their point of view. They've heard your point of view. Look, yeah, okay, agree to disagree. Yeah. Or you might go, hey, I hadn't actually thought of it from that angle before. That's a good point. And they might think the same about you. That's the ones I appreciate. And I find myself thinking a lot of the time, like, I've got to get better at being able to accept that someone just doesn't think the same as me, and that is okay. It's freaking hard, but there's that part in the documentary that there's one. I can't remember her name. Was the girl with the blue hair though, Ben? That's how I remember her. And she said she follows a diverse range of people on her social media from all religious backgrounds, political views, whatever. So that she's exposed to a range of information and opinions, so she can have a better understanding of where people sit on matters. I have been very guilty of late during these times, these challenging times, to have unfollowed a person or hidden a person from my timeline. That's pre-seeing this. Would I still do that? Maybe not. And, in my defense, doing that in the heat of those moments was to save a friendship or to save a relationship, because you're like, I don't want to, you know what, maybe if I just don't see this, it's going to be better for us, whatever.
Are you unfollowing those people because they're just dipshits or because they're speaking out about... Oh, like if someone just like, you're just like, shut up, loser. but not because of their political view or anything like that, but just because they're just like shut the fuck up.
I to be honest,
like you're just embarrassing, and I'm spending too much time internally thinking about this, or is it because of their differences in opinion?
It's the toll it takes on me. Like I'll go away and think about it and stew on something. Like if I see it, similar to what you said earlier, I'll sit there teetering on edge of, should I just blast them? Should I just comment a tweet and totally ruin their whole argument here? Or should I just not? You know what, I won't. What's that going to achieve? And then suddenly I've spent 10 minutes of my time wrestling with this idea. When I look back on it, half an hour later when I've cooled off and gone, they're not even, who cares? They're not going to change the world.
These platforms, they have the like button and the comment button and the share button. They should have a time spent stewing on it button.
I'd be screwed.
You put in time. Just so people know, like, oh, this is not getting much traction. It's like, you fucking have no idea. It was getting traction in people's minds.
Yeah, in Diamond Creek in Victoria, that had plenty of traction. Don't you worry.
But there's that, and I'm sure people think the same of like just and it's particularly in Australia. You talk about tall poppy syndrome and people having to go at like you were right that they're doing a podcast and putting ourselves out there and that sort of thing. It's like, yeah, maybe these won't work out, but why do you give a fuck? Is because why are you having a crack at someone having a crack? Like it's just, I don't know. It all comes for me, just keeps coming back to like people's like their the way that they think and feel and about themselves more than anything. It's just sort of like it shines a light on those people. But yeah, I heard that argument too on the you should go out of your way to follow and have conversations with people who think differently to you and stuff like that. And I can't say that I've made a conscious effort of it.
No, neither.
Actually, maybe not, because I live in Thornbury, right? And it's extremely left leaning, and I've got very left leaning friends and very left leaning like household, that sort of thing. I'm in the middle, but lean towards the left. If I'm going to put myself in a box, which I shouldn't. But I agree with a lot of things that people say that are just leaning onto the right. And when I say just, I mean reasonable people. So maybe I do hang out with people who I actually don't necessarily agree with. And that can be testing. It actually can be very hard.
Yeah, I kind of subscribe to the... I try to subscribe to the don't talk politics with friends. It's hard. And it's hard in these times because everyone can have an opinion. And that's another thing of social media is it gives everyone that validation of, hey, I should be able to have an opinion on this. I can do that. I've got the platform too. You could argue that's why we've got a podcast, Ben. We feel we've got a platform. We're entitled to it. It's hard to not find yourself engaged in those conversations because everyone does think now they've got an informed opinion. Based on a lot of the time, not much fact. Same for me. I'm sure I have opinions on things where I've based it on...
That's the difference.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Like, I won't comment if I don't know truly the answer, which is a lot of the time. And the people who comment are like, no, I saw this thread once. Like, just yesterday, I saw this one thread. I'm just going to go ham on this thread that I just learned this. And then people are like, okay, but have you thought about this? And they're already screwed. Yeah. It's like the people who choose to comment when you don't actually know the answer yourself deep down.
Yeah.
They're the ones where I'm thinking like, are you just trying to get clout? Like, are you just trying to get followers? Are you like trying to be relevant? Because if not, like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Don't even open your mouth or be more open. Like, this is what I thought, but could you enlighten me and like actually try and have a conversation about that?
I often think that the people that don't necessarily have the information they think they have, they definitely think they've got it and they're sold on, oh no, I do know what I'm talking about. So it's that much harder to break through to them. But yeah, I don't know. That documentary was, it was definitely interesting. I'd recommend it to anyone interested in what we've just spoken about for the last 40 minutes, but
it'll scare the pants off you
for sure. Have you been watching anything else at the moment in your lockdown? What have you been spending your time doing besides footy? I mean, that would take up a lot of time.
Here's one thing that I will say: I need to stop investing my time in shows that have just finished a season but can't go to production because of COVID.
What's disappointed you?
Oh, well, at the very start of COVID, like in Melbourne anyway, I was I smashed through Peaky Blinders, and that was amazing. But that's left me hanging. And then with my partner Molly, recently we just smashed through Yellowstone on Stan.
I've watched season 1. Have you finished it all?
Yeah, it's only 3 seasons so far. Again, though,
wow.
To be honest, as good as it is, you're almost better off waiting
for the 4th season.
Yeah. So from now on, I'm only watching things that have completed. I might just go back and watch,
really?
Breaking Bad, or who knows, maybe Tony Soprano again.
Yeah. Okay. I don't hate that. I don't hate that opinion. Because there's a show out at the moment.
Now.
Hey,
I need to know.
Yeah, I know. Well, there's a big thing at the moment with The Boys, the TV show. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's on Amazon. It's a superhero show, but it's essentially it's R-rated as if it actually happened in a real world, and these superheroes are just pharmaceutically created by a pharmaceutical company. So it's almost set in what would be the most realistic way we would ever actually have a superhero is if some big pharmaceutical company was just drugging up kids from a young age, and then they create it's essentially a team of superheroes in order to take control of the military. So that's what the company's aim is to have the monopoly over a country's military, and then they can create wars. So it's a lot of propaganda. It's all that sort of stuff. And it also deals with the realities of what would actually happen if a character like the Flash, for instance, there's a character loosely based around that. You're familiar with the Flash, very fast runner. So the whole show makes sense. The whole show starts with this character running and somebody stepping out from a curb as if they've just been hit by a car. So instead of a car, it's this character running. What would happen? The character would fucking splat. They run through them. So it's very graphic, very violent, and it's a massive show. It's got a massive following at the moment. But this
Stan
season,
Lee wrote it, didn't he?
yeah, I think he was the creator of the characters. Didn't write it, but characters, so he gets all the royalties.
That's like getting all the royalties for what your children do because you had the children. You're like, well, they were mine.
That is a good analogy. I don't mind that. But people have cracked it, to your point. This season, with season 2, they've decided to go weekly with their release. Instead of like season 1, there it is, all at once, go watch it, enjoy it, love it. This time, no, weekly, guys. You're just going to have to wait. So...
Sons of bitches.
It's a massive thing, though. People want it all now, Ben. I'm the same. We live in an on-demand world. If I can have it all at once, give it to me all at once. There's no reason I can't. So I totally get what you're saying about that. Now, in terms of some shows I could throw your way that are completed start to finish, are you looking for another one at the moment?
Oh, yeah, I'll take you. Just because we're doing a podcast, I'll take your recommendations.
Thanks. You can just throw them out afterwards.
Typewriter.
Yeah. Have you got Binge?
No, I've got KO. I heard you can have Binge for a bit extra or something.
I think it might be maybe a Telstra thing. I don't know if it's Telstra. There's a phone company, I think, that do the package of them. But
of course there is. That's the other bloody thing. Like, phone companies owning fucking HBO rights. Like, where do you get off? Where do you get off? I'm with Labara, by the way, on my phone.
Labara? What is...
I'm paying $12 a month, mate, and I'm getting 10 plus gig, but they're giving me like a data bank and all that kind of stuff. And I've never been happier. Then you got Optus, like, oh, you like soccer, do you? Well, you have to be with us if you want to watch soccer. Your business model's broken. That's what I'm saying. All the big telco companies in Australia are like, you're on notice. You're going to be the Blockbusters of whenever Netflix took over Blockbuster.
If you want to sponsor the Magoos,
provide a cell service. Yeah, go fuck yourselves. Anyway, sorry. So you say
I reckon
HBO is the biggest one in Australia. That's just like, let us watch it somehow. I will pay for HBO Direct, but they're like, no, you live in Australia. It's like, why does it matter?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I'm saying, Ben.
I don't know why I'm ranting about this.
No, that's what I'm saying, mate. Get Binge. It's got all HBO.
And not to I already pay for KO. Actually, no, I don't. I steal my mate's KO, like a true friend does.
I love you. This worked up. You're not even paying for KO.
And not to get we're into the politics side of things, but I will not be supporting Rupert Murdoch. He is the owner of Foxtel and therefore the owner of KO and the owner of Binge because they're related. So they're all the same companies. And we think, oh yeah, no, Binge is not Foxtel. You're paying the same bloke. And that bloke is the one who puts the news that you're talking about. Like, that is just... Oh, where's my tinfoil hat?
I was about to say, you have touched on a bit of everything. A bit of right-leaning, a bit of left-leaning, a little bit of tinfoil hat for the conspiracy theorists out there. That's...
People out there who are like, I can't figure this guy out. I can't figure myself out.
No, that's why he's got a shaved head and he's wearing an Essendon Hawaiian shirt. He can't work out what day it is.
In the middle of winter, so, go figure.
Mate, you're going into... footy finals now. It's about to be the pointy end of the AFL football season.
The Magoos or myself?
Essendon aren't. Essendon aren't going into the finals at all. Your mob.
Essendon going to hell. That's where we're going.
They after this year, hell would be an upgrade after the year they've had.
Heads will roll. That's all I'm saying.
What's going to happen? What's happening at the Magoos throughout finals? Is there any plans in place early?
But not big plans. We'd like to keep it simple on the show. We like to just base the show around bands and that sort of thing. We've scattered guests throughout the season instead of heavily relying on guests. I find just the more people you got to get on, the more work you got to do.
Yeah,
I mean that's, to be honest, that is the main reason because people are happy to come on. But we do this thing called the conference call of the week. So you've been a part of it.
I've been on that, a couple of times.
So we basically get we look at who's playing this week and we go, all right, that's going to be the best game, that one, Richmond versus Brisbane or whatever. And then we go, all right, let's get two fans on the show who can actually go head to head and battle it out verbally on, who's going to win, that sort of stuff, like whilst keeping it very lighthearted. But
bit of
that seems to do very well. And we're very into our audience and our community. It's a small community, but
that seems to strike a chord, does it?
It seems to strike a chord. I think people just definitely feel more it's their show as well, which it definitely is, because our best gold comes from our listeners who tune in and do the conference call. So we're thinking maybe just do maybe more of those instead of just one of the week. we may as well just do maybe every game and actually have on.
When they're all finals, they're all good games, so it's not a bad point.
I'm also thinking maybe, and this is just a little exclusive.
Hang on,
for you guys.
Yeah.
Instead of 2 fans, because we do a Zoom sort of setup where there's the 4 of us.
Yeah,
Thinking we get on 1 fan and there's 3. We're waiting for the other quote fan, and it turns out to be someone who's more heavily involved in that club, so say an ex-player or something like that. So, for example, like something which would be awesome would be some Richmond Nuffy who we just got on the show, who's a big fan of the show, and then they're playing Brisbane, for example, and then all of a sudden John O'Brien pops up, and it's
wow!
I mean, just watching that person really go into their shell. Yeah. John thrive and just that sort of...
Certainly an unfair advantage. I mean, what a way to put somebody off. Last minute, they're going in, they're all ready to fly the flag for their mob, and then they see someone that's lined up for that opposition team before. That would... If that happens to me, if I end up coming on...
It's finals. If you can't handle this pressure, then you shouldn't be on the show.
That is true. It's a way to weed out the actual, any real talent that you might have. You've actually had some big guests on this year. This year, I feel the guests have really picked up a lot.
Yeah, we have, and it's not. Well, I mean, in our 6th episode, we say this nearly every second week of our season 1, episode 6. Remind me, said we had Anthony Koutafidis on, and that was.
I still don't know how you pulled that one off. That was early days for the podcast.
I don't know either. When you've got a shaved head and a Hawaiian shirt on. This is the funniest thing of it. This is the interview went really well, but what was funnier about the whole thing was more just how it happened. Like, we basically just inboxed him and just said, "Hey mate, we're local sort of podcast. Would you want to come on and share your thoughts on your footy career and all that kind of stuff?" "Yeah, boys, happy to help. Sounds great. Flick us the address, blah blah blah." So I was living in Preston at the time.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, you've been to that old Preston.
I went to the old Preston house.
I thought he was going to explain the Preston house.
Well, the Preston house it had the halfway house vibe, didn't it? It felt like a house where there'd be a lot of people coming and going. You're not quite sure who lives there and who's maybe just coming through.
Yeah. Furniture's donated more than bought.
Furniture's donated. A broken window in the lounge room, so in winter it's a bit chilly. TV, like the furniture's got... I felt there was no TV at one point, so I'm not sure.
Marinara stains, just for more character.
Everywhere. Back door, wide open, that sort of a thing. So if you're a former... I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer, but a former star of the game, a high-profile individual, Anthony Koutafidis, I would have been packing my dacks turning up to that place.
If you were me or him?
Him, not you. I wasn't concerned about you.
Well, this is the thing. We think that he didn't do his homework and he didn't look at our followers and look at how many episodes we've done, all this kind of stuff. He would have walked around the side of the house down at Preston, and I reckon he knew then when he first walked in. He looked at the room and he saw producer Jack with his handheld camera and us two. Jake, by the way, massive Carlton fan, so he's the one who carries the show, and this was his most he was starstruck, and I was sort of like, oh god, now I'm going to have to be the one who sort of carries it. And you got Anthony Koutafidis sitting on this couch that bloody had just collecting dust for years.
The stains on that would have been unbelievable.
Oh, you have no idea.
I
have no idea, because I think we picked it up from Facebook Marketplace probably. But that was one of the funniest episodes. But it was sort of just like we looked at each other after that episode and we're like, well, where do we go from here?
Yeah, I mean, that early on to get such a high profile, it's tough.
Yeah, we sort of made a conscious effort that we're like, all right, let's work on our relationship on the podcast, because that's what we need to grow, and that's we can't expect to get Anthony Koutafidis on every other week.
Yeah.
But this year we had some really good guests and not as high names, but more stories and stuff like that.
Alan Christensen one was great.
Alan Christensen was probably my favorite episode that I've done. Mainly for his story and how close that sort of similar story with addiction is with myself, like with my dad, and so very similar connections and stuff like that. So if anyone doesn't know Alan, he plays for your boys, Brisbane.
My boys, the Brisbane Lions.
Brisbane Lions. It may be his last season. He said on the show that he's waiting for the tap on the shoulder, that you maybe not be needed anymore, but he's fully fine with that. But overcame and still going through, because addiction is something that you just don't really overcome. It's something you live with. I overcame gambling addiction. Like, spent a lot of money just gambling on horses and stuff like that. And to have him on was awesome. I mean, that was more of a. Actually, we still had a lot of laughs on that show, but hearing his perspective
felt
awesome.
a bit of a different tone for the show compared to normal.
Different tone. Yeah, we did it as a standalone episode instead of in conjunction with our normal stuff. But how open and honest he was and conversational and like truly open and honest, like, would tell us stories about, spending probably upwards of 300,000 and like losing that much money. And he was a standout this year. Like he was awesome. He's got his own podcast as well, Addicted to the Game, which is he actually has another guest who battle with addiction and real 21st century things like more anxiety, depression. Not that they weren't a thing back in the day, but they're just more come to light these days. Particularly men's mental health. And Jake works at Movember, my co-host at Movember Foundation. So. We get on a lot of people in that realm who are doing things for charity and stuff like that. So it's a really cool dynamic.
Branching out.
Well. And finals,
it's evolving. The Magoos every week it evolves that little bit more. It's very good, mate. Yeah. So you can find it
like during the off season. We might even do like maybe a pop culture dabble in local pop culture or something.
Okay. There might be something in the works. A little cross promotion, maybe. That'd be nice.
Funny actually if we did like a podcast review on our podcast of podcasts with like under 50 followers or something, like, and just like the
Magoos of the podcast world. I like to think we'd be at the top of the list, though, mate. So that would be the issue.
Well, no, I think you did definitely be getting more downloads than that, Daniel.
We are. Don't worry. I like to keep it a low-key environment here at the Pop Culture Experience, mate. So very humble, very humble. Where can they get the podcast?
All of your apps, pretty much. Spotify. I don't know about Stitcher. I haven't really looked into that. That's something.
It's one of those things I constantly find myself realizing, oh, wait, there's another platform it can go on, and just sort of chipping away. Yeah, I always go with the sign off to an episode of if it's somewhere it's not, if it's not somewhere it should be, let me know. That's what I do.
Yeah.
So,
I like that.
A little sign off.
But if you're on any of your major apps, like it's on there, and FYI, it's not the boys from Sportsbet who 3 months into our journey stole our name.
You're joking.
SEN. No, I wish
What
I
is it? SEN's the Magoos or something?
Stanley, and they were on like 9 till 10 on a Sunday night. They're the boys from the social media team, and there's links to. I shouldn't get into it. There is links. There is heavy links to Jake's past. So
boy, scandal.
We didn't have the tinfoil hats on where we're like, these guys have stolen our name, but. They lasted about 8 episodes, but if you see their podcast because of the backing they had from SEN, they might be above ours in terms of searching.
That is very Stanley. Very Stanley.
But as I said, I haven't spent much time on it. I'm not dwelling on it. I'm moving forward. But if I ever come across these boys on the street...
you just look out. Beautiful, mate. Looking forward to the finals on the Magoos. If you're a footy fan, even if you're not, go give Magoos a listen. It's a good laugh. And you might learn something about footy. If you're international and you want a little bit more info about it, what better way to learn than from a few nuffies that throw around their opinion in a very funny way, I like to think, Ben. So there you go. Give the Magoos a listen. Good luck in the finals series, mate, for the show, not for Essendon because they're not in it this year. And hopefully they are somewhere down the line. It's not too far away. I haven't
won a final in 16 years, but I appreciate it.
Who's counting? Thanks for joining the show, mate.
Thanks, mate.